Partly cloudy, a passing shower, low 64 overnight. Currently sunshine and 66. Your next news update is at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Make sure to check out the Income Store live video stream of today's show right now at 560theanswer.com.
Don't miss Sean Hannity, Michelle Malkin, and Laura Logan at Freedom Summit 2019. Get your tickets today at freedomsummitchicago.com.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Trump talking tax cuts 2.0, and among other ideas, he's kicking around payroll tax cut.
Yeah, he said, of course he blamed the Fed first. Then he said that, that's a possibility.
I've been thinking about payroll taxes for a long time. Whether or not we do it now or not is, it's not being done because of recession.
But then why is it being done? I mean, if everything is economically glorious right now, then why do we need more tax cuts?
It's
I'd love for a payroll tax cut.
We always need reductions in taxes. Okay. If you want to grow, you reduce the percentage of money that government is taking from productive concerns. The other thing, and this I like, is indexing capital gains tax to inflation. Under current law, investors pay taxes on their nominal gains. So, for example, someone who bought a stock for $1 million in 1990 that's now worth $10 million would pay taxes on $9 million in capital gains, even though some of that has been there's been attrition due to inflation, and that just makes sense. That's just proper and fair. That could be something that Trump could do through executive fiat. It probably would face a court challenge from the left, but that's okay. That shouldn't stop you from doing the things that are proper and within your power. For more on this topic of tax cuts 2.0, and I want to get to his opinion on the tax the left is eyeing that would be red meat for the socialists, pun intended. Jim Pethokoukis, CNBC contributor, columnist for the American Enterprise Institute, joins us. Jim, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
What do you think about Trump's public ruminations about tax relief?
Well, he's been saying that the trade war is actually boosting the economy. That it's actually driving growth. I mean, clearly that's not the case. No. And the obvious tax cut should be cutting the import taxes, should be cutting the tariffs. That is clearly the tax cut which would have the most impact, the quickest impact. I think both fiscally as well as like improving people's sentiment and the attitudes of consumers and business. That's obviously the thing he should do if he's really concerned about avoiding a recession. But that's not on the table, so now he has to figure out some other, something else to do, whether it's, it's inflation index of cap gains, which, I don't think would have much immediate impact. I mean, the payroll tax cut would probably have more immediate impact. It's just something Republicans have been very skeptical of, but obviously, the president is not a traditional Republican.
Well, plus, I mean, and I understand your point. I concede your point about the tariffs, but right, since that's not on the table, what he's talking about doing that he might be inclined to do or push, the payroll tax has the nice benefit of helping low-income workers, so it takes a little bit of the class envy demagoguery tactic away from the left.
No, but but let's be clear that the whole point of the Trump tax cuts, the main point, the economic reason for doing them, was so that businesses would invest more.
Right. That
would raise productivity, wages would go up. But the very first thing that thing was supposed to do was create a much higher sustainable level of business investment. That is not happening. It's really a stunning indictment of those tax cuts. And why isn't it happening? Well, one reason may be the trade war. Well, so again, we have the trade war in a different way undercutting the economy.
But you have seen
not a good idea.
Well, and again, I concede your point, but you have seen wage growth, and interestingly, there was news out this week, wage growth among effectively the blue collar sector going at a little bit better clip than the white collar sector.
Right. Yeah. But the point wasn't to pump a bunch of stimulus in the economy just to keep it going a little longer, and we don't care how big the deficits are. The point was to create a stronger sustainable economic recovery that was undergirded by more business investment, which there hasn't been, higher productivity growth, which there hasn't been. The whole point, was just to spend a bunch of money and try to juice the economy for an extra year or two. Well, I guess we accomplished that, but now here we are again after the juice has been juiced, and now we're thinking, well, now we need more juice. And by the way, the deficits, I realize no one cares about this anymore, are $1 trillion and higher for as far as the eye can see.
Wow. Real quick, just quick back to that payroll tax cut. Do you think that'd be a waste of ammunition though if there's another downturn?
Well, I think the point of that is to try to prevent there from being a downturn. It's sort of a stimulus. It's kind of like a guarantee that the economy won't slip into a recession. I think at some point, you don't have to worry that if we cut payroll taxes, well, the Fed just might not cut interest rates, and then it would be totally offset by monetary policy. I mean, the administration's in a bit of a pickle here because their one big idea that might have some impact might get offset by the Fed. So, of course, I assume we can expect a lot more attacks than by the president on Jay Powell, the Fed chair.
Well, right, at least until he gets that 50 basis points interest rate cut that he wants. Yeah.
Well, the Fed's going to see what's going on with fiscal policy, and so if fiscal policy is doing more, then the Fed might do less. So then you're sort of at the exact same point.
What's your take on this favorite topic of the week among the economic entertainers on cable news, talking about the inverted yield curve? Heard a couple of different opinions about how important of an indicator that truly is, particularly after a decade of quantitative easing, and part of the point was to drive down long-term rates, and so this is a bit of a human-engineered phenomenon this time around, and that's sort of the point that Jim Urio has made on CNBC and John Tammany makes at Real Clear Markets.
I think in the past it's been a worrisome indicator. It's predicted every recession. If you use the word prediction very loosely, you can also say that it's like I said, it predicted 10 of the last recessions, that kind of thing. So
yeah, right.
It would not cause a recession. But I think it's one of many things to be concerned about, because you have that. Yeah, but you have a slowing of the Chinese economy. You have slowing the European economy. You have the possibility of Brexit. So there's like a lot of things going on at the same time. And listen, you have the president's advisors now telling GOP donors, well, we might have a recession, but it'll be a short and moderate one. I have no idea if it'd be a short or moderate one. So there are a lot of concerns then. To the extent that makes people nervous, then it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think this yield curve is just one more thing that makes people nervous.
How much impact does what's happening overseas have on the prospect of slower growth, even if it's not recessionary, particularly Germany, perhaps on the cusp of going negative?
Well, if the U.S. economy was already going to slow, and most forecasts were to slow from 3% growth to 2%, so you need to have a lot less to work with if everything starts going wrong everywhere else. And I think there's one thing we learned during the financial crisis, that there are also linkages between economies which aren't necessarily obvious, which come into play during times of economic stress. So I would be concerned that if we're just going to view the United States economy as this one oasis of okay growth, well, everything's going to hell everywhere else.
Well, and this is where it seems that Trump understands that to some extent, even though, again, you would argue that he doesn't so much when it comes to trade policy.
Going to hell everywhere else is trade policy.
Well, right, I understand, but there's the interesting development this week. I just want to take note of Trump and the big tech companies uniting against a common enemy. This is just a rather unexpected development. That common enemy is France pushing for a 3% tax on global tech companies with at least 750 million euros in global revenue. So Trump and the big tech companies that are all allied against him for his reelection coming together to oppose that big tech tax from France.
Well, I think the president is angry about that tech tax because he didn't think of it first. I think he'd be happy levying that himself. It's kind of like the Democrats hate the tariffs because they didn't get there first. Macron got to the tech tax before Trump could get there.
Yeah, well, I think actually if he really wanted to do that, he probably find receptivity, bipartisan receptivity in Congress, because you got a lot of people on the left cheering an antitrust investigation that's being pursued by the Trump DOJ. Isn't that right?
Yes, there are people on the left and the right who want to do a variety of bad things to our largest, most successful, most innovative companies. The ones Europe can't build, and the one Chinese are trying to build or steal. So yeah, there's bipartisan support for very bad policy.
Yes, well, as there often is, which is why you should always be skeptical
Indeed,
of
there is.
bipartisan support. Your buddy Larry Kudlow was on Meet the Press this weekend talking about the economy and suggesting that we've seen a little bit of a slowdown in the energy sector in particular, and that perhaps is driving a little bit of a slowdown more generally, a slowdown in growth more generally. But most of the indicators are green, and there's no reason not to be optimistic. Why are you trying to rain on Larry Kudlow's optimism?
Larry Kudlow is a very optimistic person, and I think it's also important to understand yourself, understand where your personal bias is. I'm a lot like Larry in that way. My bias, even though perhaps hasn't sounded like it over the last 2 minutes, is optimism. And so I always have to, catch myself, am I missing something on the downside? So I think we all have to sort of, review our priors when thinking about, making forecasts and so forth.
But I mean, in terms of what Larry was arguing, and again, he's a member of the administration. He's the president's economic advisor, so he's going to put the best face on the economy and Trump policy that he can. But I also think as I'm sure you would say, he's an honorable guy. He's a good economist. He's a smart guy. And so, what about what he was saying substantively in terms of the case that there's no reason to believe a recession is in the offing?
Well, certainly, like almost everything that the administration pointed to, like 6, maybe 9 months ago as good indicators, are weaker today than they were then. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to a recession. It means the economy is slowing down.
Right.
And, we haven't seen the unemployment rate go up. Job growth is still strong. I mean, those are all good things, and things you would expect to start reversing if we're going to a recession. But, I don't think we're going to have a recession. I think we're going to have a slowdown. But again, I'm an optimist. I'm probably going to be one of the last guys to say we're going to go into a recession.
All right. He is glass half full. Jimmy Pethokoukis, CNBC contributor, columnist for the American Enterprise Institute. James, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right. See you later, gang.
Take care.